Here we go. Here we are at the Lord's feet once again. Of course, we've been there all week, I trust, and it's good that we're able to be here together and ponder and contemplate the things that specifically have to do with our relationship to the world and what God would like us to bring to the world. So we're going to be talking about some of these things and continuing our discussion from last week. And it was a good class. And I say that because I believe that our thinking needs to change in some ways about this idea of evangelism. I feel like when we say that word, that suddenly there's a certain kind of a pressure that we feel that, am I doing enough? Are we as a congregation doing enough? Or, should this building be filled with people? If it's not, how come it's not? Are we failing? Because we get that message at a lot of times, but there's more to this question that we're beginning now to consider, and I feel good about that. When I want to really get into some specifics this morning with regard to this, and I hope that the result will be that we have a better, more accurate, and more motivating way of looking at this than perhaps we have in the past. And I say that we in a very general way. So Ray, would you like to lead us in prayer this morning? Get you going. Thank you.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we have together to study your word. And we ask you to open it up to our hearts. Help Dale this morning in teaching and guide us always. It's in Jesus' name I pray now.
Amen. Okay. September 3rd, leading the lost. And so we have kind of looked at this under the umbrella of as you have opportunity, do good to all men, especially to those who are of the household of faith. Sometimes, perhaps, we can kind of skip over the do good to all men part and go right to the household of faith part, right? So we want to emphasize the doing good to all men, okay? No matter who they are, no matter where they are, no matter what they are, if we have an opportunity to do good, then we are to take the opportunity to do good, okay? So we're going to kind of go from that. So we talked about the greatest, most needful work is to, satisfying work that can be done is in this lifetime is to save a soul from sin and death. So in James 5, we recall that if anyone strays from the truth, if someone strays from the truth and someone brings him back, he has saved a soul from death and covered a multitude of sins. And of course, he's talking about brethren in that context. But this saving someone from sin and death is true of anyone that is brought back or brought to God. So we're not going to do that one here. All right. So we had made a statement that just as a given Christian may refuse to be brought back from his wandering from the truth, lots of people in the world refuse to be brought to the Lord. Now, in Matthew 6, and I'm going to actually be preaching out of Matthew 6 and 7 this morning, but I want you to notice, if you would, with me, in this 6th chapter of Matthew. Excuse me, Matthew 7:6. Matthew 7:6. He says, do not give what is holy to the dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, or they will trample them under their feet and tear you to pieces. Okay? So, when we're talking about the world and leading the world to Christ, Jesus is teaching here that if you are claiming to speak for God, it's not right or effective to throw your morality before people, and this is the key, who have not agreed to follow it. Okay? I want you to think about that. The tendency that a given Christian may have would be to say, this is what God says, and you need to be living this way. Right? But the flaw in that is that they haven't agreed to live that way. This is what is perhaps commonly spoken of as Bible thumping, to use that term. See, so here's somebody who has not consented to live that way. They have not adopted the gospel as their way of life. And we come and say, well, you need to change your ways because the book of Leviticus says you should be holy like God. Right? But they never signed up to live by those rules. Okay? And so that's not going to work. So he said, now, and listen to what he says here. Now, first of all, when he says, do not give what is holy to the dogs, that sounds harsh. Okay? Right? But you need to understand that in this day and age and context, remember the woman that touched Jesus' garment and was healed? And remember what Jesus said to her? It's not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. Now, how insulted was that Gentile woman, that Canaanite woman? How insulted, if you remember the story, how insulted was she at what he said? No. So even the dogs eat from the crumbs that fall from the master's table, right? So think about the Jewish-Gentile relationship. Dogs and pigs were ways that Jews spoke of Gentiles. Okay? And everybody understood that. And so for somebody to call me a dog or to call you a pig, well, it's going to hit you a little bit differently than in this Jewish-Gentile world of Jesus' day. Okay? So first of all, understand that. And he says, do not throw your pearls before swine. Okay? Now, what is he talking about there? I have the best reference I know for what he's talking about is in Romans chapter 3. And let me know if you can identify what Paul is doing here. Where he says, in verse 10, he says, there is none righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become useless. There is none who does good. There is not even one. Their throat is an open grave, and with their tongues they keep deceiving. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and mercy are in their paths, and the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. So there's all kinds of passages that he's taken these things, and you know what that's called, what he was doing there? Stringing pearls. That's what they called it. So the rabbis would take a passage from here and a passage from there, and they would weave them together, okay? So they called that stringing pearls. And so what he's telling them in context here is that don't throw your pearls, okay, the teachings of God, don't just throw them before people who have not consented to live that way, all right? Now, there is a place for that, but we're going to talk about that this morning, and we're going to put some of these things in order, because you may be thinking now, well, what are you saying? We're not supposed to teach people the gospel? No, I'm not saying that at all, and you'll see that clearly as we continue this morning. Okay, but the point is that pigs, I hate even saying this because I'm from this culture in time. They're not ready to wear pearls. Okay, so if you just take your pearls, and this is Jesus himself saying this, is it not? Okay, if you just take pearls and throw them before pigs, the pigs are not going to put them on. And look at how, they're not ready to do that. It's not going to be effective. Okay, yeah.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but dogs were really kind of looked down upon in that culture, because you remember when, who was it? Was it Jezebel, where the dogs came to lick the blood?
Yeah.
That's kind of what they were kind of the scavengers of town.
Yeah.
You know, these cute little cuddly things you put on Facebook now. Yeah. They ran around cleaning up the garbage.
Yeah.
And when people would die and they were not accounted for, or they'd be off in a ditch somewhere, the dogs are what took care of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Paul in Philippians, beware of the dogs, beware of the evil workers. So, I mean, it does have a derogatory tone to it. I'm not saying that it doesn't. But in that day and time, that's just how they spoke. And everybody understood that. Okay? And so we're not saying that we don't have a gospel to share. But if, and here's the crux of the matter, if we are to go about as lights in the world, right? We said you are the light of the world. If we're going to show people what peace with God, shalom, looks like in the midst of the chaos in the world, if we're going to stand out that way, okay, and show people what it looks like, then people are going to come. And this is, this is maybe where the thinking, where there's a departure in how we usually think about this. If we go about as lights in the world, then people are going to come, and they're no longer going to be, if I may use the wording, I don't like it, but they're no longer going to be pigs who can't wear pearls, but they'll be children that the Lord is teaching, okay? But there's a starting point to all this, and the starting point is not, well, we'll get to it in a moment, and I'm going to lay it out, but taking the pearls of knowledge and wisdom of God and throwing them before people and say, you need to be living this way, and their reaction is, I never signed up to live that way. I mean, it's out of order. Okay, and so we'll take a look at that. Yeah, Steve, and then. Yeah.
So is what you're working on right now in alignment with Matthew 10, where Jesus told his disciples to go out and do the work, but if they don't receive it, shake the dust off your feet?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Same thought stream?
Yeah, because, okay, it is in line with that, okay? And because they're going to speak the truth, they're going to they're going to bring those pearls in. And remember, these are people that they're going to that are Jews, okay? And they're going to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He said, don't go into the towns of the Samaritans, etc. That's going to be later. But when he sends them out, they're going to Jewish people. people who ought to show them hospitality and ought to receive them. And if they don't receive them, then yeah, you shake the dust off your feet and you go. Yeah.
So then there's a difference between Matthew 10 and what you're talking about, in that in one case you're talking to people that are supposed to already be believing in what you're saying versus saying it to people that
Yeah.
don't have any connection at all. So they really are two different things.
Yeah, and think about this, that here, he tells his disciples about some of the things that are going to happen to them, that people are going to reject them, and all these different things, that they're going to have to flee from one town to another. That's among the Jews. And the book of Matthew, see, Matthew was a tax collector, and the slant of Matthew's gospel is toward the outcast, the people who the religious people think they're not in, see? But he's going to show them that the people who think they're in are out, and the people they think should be out are in. And so they're going to suffer this persecution and rejection from God's own people. People who, okay. I'm going to start going off in the book of Matthew here, and we're just going to, but yeah, that's exactly right. They should have known. They should have been receptive. Okay? Yeah. Rick?
Just to kind of tie that give not that which is holy to the dogs, cast your pearls before swine. I kind of look at it in modern day. If I were to show, a 10-year-old my vinyl album collection, which I would consider to be pearls, okay? They don't have an appreciation for those pearls.
No.
Okay, they have no context. So when I show my, Lydia, my granddaughter, a bunch of foreign currency from other countries, no context, because she's not grown up in that world.
Right.
She doesn't have any idea what that is. Likewise, for the dog comparison, to give something which is holy to the dogs, I get the kind of the connotation that where you're trying to place the dogs, but they don't have an appreciation for anything holy at that point.
Yeah.
Because of what they do.
Right.
There will be a time, and you're going to get to it,
Yeah.
when you can present that which is holy, when they have an
Right.
appreciation for it.
Right, yeah. See, because there is a transformation period. And we're talking about you and me in our world having an impact, and there is a transformation that takes place, and we're going to talk about exactly what that is. But the Lord does say, you're the light of the world, city set on a hill cannot be hidden, etc. And so what we're going to be talking about is that when we establish relationships and let people come to us, remember what the Lord said, if I be lifted up, what did he say? I will draw all men to myself. And so one of the things is that we put the emphasis on, I've got to, go into all the world and teach the gospel, okay. But we put the emphasis on, I've got to go and approach this person. I've got to bring this person. Instead of being a doorway, a city gate, a light on a hill that they can come to, and maybe that doesn't seem aggressive enough in some people's way of thinking, but when we start to set this in order, I think you're going to see that this is right. Okay. Yeah, Kevin?
That was actually where I was going. I wanted to circle back to Galatians from last
Sure.
class about like where you have opportunity, do good to all men, and that's not aggressive. And I was thinking about Philip and the Ethiopian. Like I think we have this very dramatic visualization that we're given in Acts there, where Philip is taken up by the Spirit and then placed with the eunuch. The Spirit drew him and the eunuch together because there was an opportunity there. And I think when we're reading Galatians, like this is an opportunity for us to pray and trust that the Spirit of God will draw those that we have opportunity to help to us. Just like Philip and the Ethiopian. Maybe it's not going to be taken up in, a wind and teleported there, but God's Spirit is there to do that for us and give us those opportunities to help them. And in contrast, I think back about like how much, throughout my lifetime with the development of social media and how many Christians I see constantly post things online, and then you just have long strings of very angry debates about it. And I think about casting your pearls before swine. There's no value or point in having that conversation there.
Right.
But there is value and point in trusting the Spirit to bring you the opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, it reminds me of some of Paul's instruction to Timothy about wrangling about words and controversies that don't bring no benefit to the hearer. Okay, and so that's what we don't want to do. And there's certainly things that we can do in order that will prevent that. So we're going to look at that here as we get going. Okay. All right. So we talked about the fact that one of the things that we'll say when it comes to evangelism and having an impact in the world is that, well, I would do more if I just knew how. Okay, I would do more if I just knew how. So we want to address that how part. We know the what, but now we want to talk a little bit about the how. So here's a quote that I ran into listening to a sermon here this past week. And the preacher said, evangelism is what God does when Christians are being Christians. Now, when you hear that, see, I'd be really interested to know how that hits you. I'd be really interested to know that, because being Christians, what God does when Christians are being Christians. Now, some people, I would think, are going to interpret that as, if I'm not winning souls, I'm not a Christian. I'm not a faithful Christian. Okay? But what I want you to understand is that there's more to being a Christian. Okay? There's more to this. And even here in the context of evangelism, okay, there's more to it than just that narrow focus of, am I going after people and bringing them to Christ? Okay? So we want to be aware of that. All right. So let's talk about a 4-step plan for evangelism, right? So I'm going to give you the plan. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. Whoa. Oh. Well. Yes, I could. Yeah. All right. So. Okay. So the first one is care. All right. So you think about this very familiar statement that we may sometimes fall into the lullaby effect with it. We hear it so much that we don't think about the details or the import. Okay, so God so loved the world. So God so loved the world. So was that a passive love, or was that no, it was an active love. He loved the world. He did what was in the world's best interest. Okay. And he gave his only begotten Son. So he did that so that whoever believes in him. So belief, I'm told in Romans 10, comes by hearing the word of Christ. Okay? Hearing the story about Christ. All right? So the telling the story is a part of things. Okay? But I want to suggest to us that if we learn, okay, and again, I mean learn, like Paul learned to be content, and some other things we could talk about, go learn what this means. I desire compassion rather than a sacrifice. If we learn to care, the rest will take care of itself. Okay? That does not mean that everybody you care about is going to become a Christian. especially immediately. They may later, right? But if we learn to care, then the rest will take care of itself. So the first part is care. So the people in your sphere of influence, and you demonstrate, whether it's in your words, in your actions, whatever it may be, when that opportunity, if you care, to demonstrate the fact that you care. Okay? That's the first part. And we have this saying, and you can fill it in if I just start it. People don't care. Yeah. So they don't care how much you know. You said it differently now. You threw me off. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. Okay? So, and I've done this. I mean, in fact, when I was at Kirkland, I was, my job was like evangelism and so there were people that I actually turned off because I felt the pressure. Well, they're paying me to do this, and so I got to get people, and I would just jump the gun. And I mean, I hate to admit this, but it's true. Okay, I just jumped the whole gun, don't even know the person now, and I'm asking them about what do you think about the Bible or this and that, and I just jump right over and nothing. Just completely wiped out an opportunity, or I didn't even create an opportunity. Okay, so that part is, and I cringe when I think of those things. I really do. I don't even like to think about it. Okay. But this is important. So you have to learn to care. You have to think about this subject. Okay. And so the second part is consciousness. How much do you think about evangelism and reaching the lost, and think about caring about the people in your sphere of influence? Okay. The things that you really care about, and you know what those things are in your life, right? Your wife, your husband, your children, whatever it may be. Those are like God and all those things are on the top. But things that you care about, that you really care about, do you ever think about those things? Okay. That's that's kind of a rhetorical, facetious question, but of course you do. The things that you care about, you think about. In fact, remember what Jesus said, and we're going to talk about this a little bit this morning, but what Jesus said in Matthew 6 about treasure, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You're thinking about, you're conscious of the things that you care about. So when it comes to this subject of evangelism, the question is, how much do you think about it? Okay? How much do you think about it? Okay, that's important. So if I'm in a situation with the lost, in my sphere of possible influence, do I think about how I am relating to people? Am I conscious of that? Okay, so that's important. Do you think about this subject? So if we look at it from a group perspective, and you say, well, we have a group of people who really don't think about it. We have leaders who, they're not really evangelistic. They don't really care about that. And I've had, I've seen that happen. Now, I'm not saying here, but I have seen that happen. And so as a group, do our leaders think about evangelism? Are they concerned about it? Are we concerned about it? Do we think about it? If we're not conscious of it, of course, we're not going to do anything. Are we? No. Okay. So care, consciousness, and then courage. Courage. Now, if we care about, and I mean really, okay, not just, don't let the words just go over your head. if we really learn to care about souls, about people, because that's what is the first prerequisite when it comes to evangelism, is that you care about people and you think about people. Now, if you really care, and it's reflected in the fact that you think about the lost. I mean, what do the lost have to look forward to? Okay? Where are they going? That's, I mean, we have to think about that. I tell you, that's a tough thing, to think about, but it's real. Yeah, Sheila?
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking that, this stuff is just not gonna come. It's something you got to pray for.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's foolish that I pray to God to bless me to care and to love people and
No,
bless
it's
me
not.
to have compassion, so this is a way that when I get my blessing, it's easier for me to do. But long as I'm not asking him to bless me to become more like his son and to have the things that Jesus had that we have when he was here walking among the people, then I'm not gonna get it because I'm coming from out the world and I could be in church. Yeah, I could be here, but my mind not gonna be as God wanted to be if I don't pray and ask him to bless me with the love and compassion that I need to have.
That's right.
That I can act towards people, So I was just, that's what I was smiling at, because you can tell us, okay, you got to care, you got to be conscious, you got to have courage, but if we don't pray to God to get these things, we're not going to have it.
That's right.
Because we're going to always
That's right.
focus on self.
That's right. That's right. That prayer is part of that consciousness part, right? Yeah, Jim?
I was going to say, you're exactly right, Sheila. I mean, Paul told the Ephesians, pray for me so I have boldness.
That's right.
So we're told to pray to God for boldness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So think about, I've never been in the military, so I can't speak from experience. Todd has and maybe others. Yeah. Great. But if what I'm told and what I read and what I hear is that people that are out guarding the walls right now really care. This is in general. I'm not in the world and not in that world or anything, but they care about the country. They're willing to sacrifice for us. Yeah. And so I often think about the fact that, here we are, where people are driving by, we're here, we're having our Bible study, we're not afraid of anything, for the most part. It's because somebody's guarding the wall. If you take those guys out, those men and women, you know what'll happen. The whole world's going to change really fast for us. Okay? Yeah, Steve.
Sheila used a word that's kind of been resonating with me as you've been working your way along here, certainly through the first three. One of the themes, I think, that's throughout the book of Matthew is that Jesus had compassion.
Exactly right.
Sheila used that word compassion,
Exactly.
and that word appears quite a few times throughout the book. And if you think about compassion, it certainly has care. When Jesus saw
Absolutely.
people that were in a jam, he cared about them, but it was on his mind. He was conscious about them, and he had the courage to take his care for them and turn it into something tangible. Compassion's really intimately woven into at least the first three that you're talking about.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. So if we do care, okay, casting all your, casting all your anxiety upon him. Why? Because he cares for you. God wants us to know that about the Lord. He cares for us. Is there any degree of motivation to serve Him that we get from the fact that we know that He cares about everything in our life? See? And so we're His students, we're His disciples who want to know what He knows so that we can do what He does for the reasons that He does it, right? And then, okay, and so we develop that care, and the things we care about, we're conscious about. And if we truly care about these things that we're thinking about, that's where we're going to get courage to do something when the opportunity comes. See, if I'm not thinking about this, if I'm not saying, okay, this person needs to know I have an opportunity to demonstrate that I care about them. I'm not here to convert you. I'm here because there's an opportunity to show that I care. Okay? And I care because I'm conscious, and that gives me the courage to what? To perform that act of kindness, okay? Regardless of what the circumstances are. So we have care and consciousness, courage, and then craft. This is where, once this relationship has been established, just by your learning how to care about people, that you have an outlook of care about the souls of the people around you. I care about them. Is that complicated? Okay. That's not hard. But the thing is, we don't necessarily, but I hope that we will, okay, be conscious when you see people. Look at them through the blood of Christ. See? Where are they going? What's their fate? After this short blip of a life is over, where are they going to be? So we don't have to carry this pressure upon us. Oh, I got to convert people. I got to get them to come to Christ, because you can't just throw the Bible in their face and expect people to adopt something that they've never agreed to adopt as their way of life. But you can care about them. Okay, that's not hard. Now, it may be hard sometimes when people are acting in ways that don't elicit that naturally, but that's part of the learning. Under all circumstances, you take that opportunity to care about people, okay? And you're thinking about them in that way, and that gives you the courage, okay? And then the last is the craft. That's where the teaching. That's where you're prepared when you have a relationship with somebody and they want to know what you have, or they ask you a question. You haven't been forcing anything on them. You've just been a light. You've been a reflection of the compassion of Christ. And they ask you a question or something, then that's where the craft comes. And that's where the preparation becomes the point. Having something that you can teach, prepared, that you can teach to someone who wants to know. Okay? Yeah, Gina.
It's really interesting because Jesus' example was that he cared for
Mm-hmm.
like the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, or Matthew, whose own people had turned their back because he was a tax collector. What's interesting in the statements of Paul is that we were the dogs. We were the pigs. We were the people that Jesus said, don't cast the stuff down there, except for that he cared for us when we were yet sinners, he died for us.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in that position, and if we remember that, then I think it's a lot easier for people who we deem to be.
Yeah.
We have to put ourselves in a position that every right to us.
Yeah. What did in Romans 4, what did Paul say? He talked about God who justifies the ungodly, and that's us, right? He justifies the ungodly, dogs, pigs, however the term, whatever the term is. And part of the caring part, and I want you to consider something that Moses said to Pharaoh back in Exodus here. It's, and you'll know the context here. I'll just read. It says, when Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron, or then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may remove the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go and they may sacrifice to the Lord. Now listen to what Moses said to him. He said, the honor is yours to tell me, when shall I entreat for you and your servants and your people, that the frogs may be destroyed from you and your houses, so that that they may be left only in the Nile? He says, the honor is yours to tell me. Think about the Ethiopian eunuch in that scenario again. And Philip preached Jesus to him. And the Ethiopian responded. Now, did he have to respond and say, look, there is water, what prevents? He didn't have to do that. Philip didn't pressure him into doing that. All he did was demonstrate that God cared about him, because he sent him to him right then when he needed someone to guide him. And he preached Jesus to him. And the Ethiopian, on his own volition, when he decided, he said, look, there's water. And he was baptized. So what I'm saying is this. Give the honor to the other person to choose. Okay. Give the honor to them to make that choice. Okay. And they will make that choice sooner or later. I'm just being general. We know the parable of the sower, and 1/4 fell on honest and good hearts. But the honor is yours to tell me. And then in verse 10, Pharaoh said, tomorrow. Now, there's a lot of discussion we could have about why he said tomorrow and not right now. And there's some pretty viable reasons why he might have done that, but that's the thing. Sometimes, you give the honor. When I remember the night I was converted, and, Darrell Cope, we get down with the study, and what do you want to do? Okay. And it was up to me, before he even asked me that question, it was up to me as to what I was going to do with that night or the next night or ever. Okay? See? And so we don't have to force people to do anything. We don't have to force people to accept the gospel. Care about them. Think about evangelism. Think about souls. Think about where they're going. If you're convicted in that, you will have the courage. Even if you feel nervous in a certain situation, you'll have the courage to let your light shine. Even if people around you are they're saying and doing things that are just so far away from God as you could possibly get, but yet you have the courage to be a Christian in that atmosphere. Okay? And people will see that and glorify your Father who is in heaven. I just want you to see the absolute absence of this way that we are taught to think, that we're supposed to go out there and just throw that Bible in front of people and say, you need to start living this way. It's just nowhere in here. Okay? But this is. Yeah, Tony, and we'll close out.
Even if you have you get the care and the consciousness and the courage, you could bring somebody into the crack. I mean, if you don't have it at this point in your life.
Yeah.
So there's not even that burden that, I can't do this because I don't know how.
Right.
Well, you know how to do the first three.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't take any kind of special knowledge.
Yeah.
It's a matter of just anybody can ask God for that and grow in that, like she was saying.
Exactly.
And then you can always bring
Yeah.
it to somebody who has that skill.
Yeah, because if the person's heart is open because of the relationship that you've had with them, and you're praying in this way, and you're praying for them, and you're learning how to care, and these things that we've talked about this morning, and you need help, then I would think the person's ready to do that. Mhm.
We had a gal that gone on to heaven now, but she had the first 3 down. And then she brought people in.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So do you get it? See? You know, and so it isn't my way to say, well, these things need to be done and burden you with it. I can't control you. You can't control me. All we can do is share these things. This is what God has laid out. We can see it all through the scripture. This is how he's laid it out. This is how people became Christians in the first century. And so, hey, you do what you're going to do with this. Okay? And what you do or don't do, that is between you and God. See? But there it is. And so I hope that our thinking has been rattled a little bit and that we're seeing this in a more accurate biblical way. And good class this morning. Thank you very much, class.